Know why Richard disappeared from the spotlight. Sir Cliff Richard was known as the Peter Pan of pop for his decades-long reign over British music charts. His position in music history appeared assured with over 250 million recordings sold and a 60-year career. Unpredictably, one of music's biggest stars vanished. A veteran BBC producer who worked with Richard on several television specials said it was like someone switched a switch. A legendary British musician went silent. Nobody announced new albums, tours, or TV appearances. For someone who had been in entertainment since the late 1950s, the silence was deafening. This absence wasn't a brief break or well-deserved retirement. Cliff Richard, the perpetually youthful singer who had weathered every musical revolution from rock and roll to disco to electronic pop, was so devastated that insiders wondered whether he would never return to public life again. The startling truth behind Sir Cliff Richard's strange disappearance is revealed today. A story of treachery, legal struggles, and personal suffering that pushed a music legend into solitude. Real story, personal challenges, and societal failure that nearly destroyed his famous career and health. First, let's examine Cliff Richard's unique place in music history before his abrupt disappearance and why his absence left such a gap in the entertainment industry. His stunning absence due to his unrivaled legacy. Cliff Richard's unexpected disappearance must be understood in light of his exceptional position in music history. Richard, who began his career in 1958 with Move It, Britain's first real rock and roll album, had hit records in 6 straight decades, a feat no other British musician had. A music historian who has researched British pop culture since the 1960s said Cliff wasn't just another aging pop star. He was the only performer to survive every musical era from pre-Beatles rock to the digital age. His cultural relevance was unquestionable even when his music wasn't hot. His career statistics are astounding. Over 130 songs, albums, and EPs reached the UK top 20, making him the third best-selling artist after Elvis Presley and the Beatles. Cliff Richard was more than a performer to generations of British music enthusiasts. Like the monarchy, he was consistent and reliable. A longtime EMI Records executive said Cliff's cultural ubiquitousness and economic success made him exceptional. Cliff was involved in British culture beyond music, with Christmas specials, royal variety performances, and Wimbledon weather delays. His unexpected absence emptied various entertainment contexts. His cultural omnipresence made his disappearance more noticeable. The musician who had released an album almost every year since 1959 ceased making music. He stopped appearing on TV. He abruptly stopped touring, which had continued into his 70s. What could push a resilient, steady performer away from more than 6 decades of fans? A police raid shattered his sense of security and unleashed a media nightmare unlike anything he had ever encountered. This raid changed everything. Cliff Richard's neat, devout life collapsed on August 14, 2014. He learned that South Yorkshire police were raiding his Berkshire property for a 1985 sexual assault claim while he was vacationing in Portugal. This raid was exceptional and traumatic for Cliff because of how it happened. A former Met investigator acquainted with the matter said, "The BBC was informed beforehand. They streamed the raid live from a helicopter over Richard's home while police searched. It was extraordinary media coverage for a preliminary probe. This extreme police misconduct made a confidential investigation a global media circus. Before Richard was interviewed by police or charged, his home was displayed on live television with commentators speculating about the charges. An old acquaintance of the singer stated, "Imagine your home being raided by friends calling to say they're watching it live on TV." Cliff felt strung out to dry before any investigation began. The presumption of innocence, which underpins justice, was shattered instantly. Richard was severely affected immediately. Friends said he had excessive shaking, insomnia, and rapid weight loss from shock. The performer, who was healthy and energetic into his 70s, looked fragile and withered. A management team member said it wasn't simply the claim, which he knew was untrue and would be disproven. It was public. He felt betrayed by trusted institutions and tried by the media before he could defend himself. This devastated Cliff, who was honorable. This shocking public spectacle began an ordeal that would keep him from performing and recording for nearly 4 years, testing his physical and mental health in a system that seemed to have abandoned fairness. He trusted throughout his life. Well, I always eat well. I strive to eat proper nutrition. I tried today. I did 45 minutes at the gym, not to lose weight. Losing weight bothers me. I'm already skinny. The unnoticed health problem. Cliff Richard disappeared from the entertainment industry, but the inquiry and media publicity caused a serious health issue. A physical and psychological collapse that his friends worried might kill the 73-year-old performer. Cliff nearly died during this time, according to a longtime friend who saw him fade. Stress literally shut down his body. Over 2 stone and 28 pounds disappeared in weeks. For a 70-year-old, shingles can be fatal. Stress might cause a heart attack or stroke, and his physicians were worried. Equally terrible was the psychological damage. Richard had post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms like intrusive thoughts, insomnia, and confusion, according to acquaintances. The religious and positive performer fell into a dark realm that contradicted his public demeanor. Cold chills woke him up at 3 or 4 a.m., stated a close friend who spent time with him then. Sometimes he forgot where he was. This man, who had performed brilliantly on stages around the world for decades and never forgot a line or prompt, was now suffering with daily tasks. Seeing it was heartbreaking. The investigation lasted almost 2 years without charges, preventing Richard from fully healing. Even simple tasks became difficult as he faced public notice and hostility. A security consultant who helped him during this time said he became a prisoner first in Portugal and subsequently in safe areas. Every public appearance risked allegations or unpleasant photos that fed the negative narrative. For someone who had always had a pleasant, open interaction with the public, this forced isolation was painful. Richard's doctors reportedly urged his management team to brace for the worst due to his deteriorating condition. As the legal procedure progressed, the public was unaware of a possibly life-threatening scenario caused by advanced age, tremendous stress, and physical problems. The remarkable thing isn't that Cliff retreated from public life during this struggle. Noticed a stress-related sickness specialist who wasn't treating Richard. Just that he survived is amazing. This type of stress can have devastating physiological effects on a 70-year-old. People in comparable situations rarely recover. Richard's absence from entertainment and his drastic transformation in public life after the probe are due to this secret health problem. A shift from one of Britain's most popular stars to someone distrustful of systems and institutions that had violated his rights. I feel tarnished since insufficient means there's some. Few understand financial ruin. Cliff Richard's struggle caused a financial tsunami few understand, in addition to health problems. Even a legendary performer was threatened by such high costs. Legal fees, mischances, and career harm totaled over £10 million. An entertainment industry financial expert acquainted with Cliff's case said the public feels he has infinite riches. However, defending yourself against such charges, especially when the police and media get involved, is costly enough to drain even the most successful artist's finances. Over £3 million were spent on Richard's legal defense during the 2-year probe. This includes defense of the claims, simultaneous legal actions against the BBC and South Yorkshire Police for their raid and investigation management, complex litigation involving numerous Queen's counsels and teams of specialized solicitors. The career impact caused far greater financial harm than these legal fees. Richard had to cancel an album release and promotional tour, delay a major book, and cancel many high-profile broadcast and concert appearances. £4 to £5 million in revenue were lost from these cancelled projects. There were also significant, unquantifiable expenses. A music business executive who has helped artists with PR issues. Damage to his streaming numbers, back catalog sales fall during investigation, cancelled endorsements, and appearance fees. These millions in lost income are tougher to assess, but real. The events had a major influence on Richard's real estate assets, which made up a large part of his total worth. He couldn't sell his Berkshire flat because of the broadcast rate. Richard had to sell the property for over £800,000 below its pre-raid worth. A wealth manager for entertainment personalities said the financial impact goes beyond immediate costs. Cliff was in his 70s, when most people worry about money and legacy. He had to liquidate money, sell properties, and focus on legal battles rather than future security. That has long-term effects beyond current costs. Financial concerns explain why Richard didn't immediately return to public activity after being cleared. Health issues and financial recovery required a more deliberate, strategic approach to rebuilding his career and protecting his future following an ordeal that endangered everything he had accomplished over 6 decades in entertainment. Tardy legal triumph. The Crown Prosecution Service dropped Cliff Richard's accusations in June 2016 after nearly 2 years of inquiry due to insufficient evidence. His legal vindication should have been a triumphant end, but it was more convoluted and heartbreaking. Despite its disprovenness, some damage can never be undone, said a reputation management consultant who works with public individuals in similar situations. Cliff had to accept that many will remember him for the raid and claims, regardless of his exoneration. This devastating fact caused Richard to sue the BBC and South Yorkshire Police for their handling of the case, a legal struggle that would last 2 years after he was acquitted. He won his BBC privacy case in July 2018. Justice Mann found the broadcaster had seriously and sensationally violated his private rights. A legal source said the court triumph was gratifying but exhausting. Cliff relived the horror through depositions, testimony, and cross-examination. Even winning was emotionally draining, delaying his return to work. The £2 million settlement, including legal fees, was a small percentage of his 4-year losses. More significantly, it couldn't recover the years of his career lost irreparably in his 70s, when time was crucial. People frequently forget that Cliff was in his latter years when this happened, said a music critic who has watched him for decades. Losing 4 years is important, but recoverable for a 30s or 40s performer. It constitutes a large part of a 70-year-old's performing years. No legal victory can restore that time and opportunity. Richard's protracted departure from public life was due to the inquiry and court action's length. It was nearly 4 years after the raid until legal problems were concluded in 2018. Years spent mostly away from recording studios, musical arenas, and television screens where he had been a fixture for 60 years. This extended hiatus and the continued stress of legal processes even after being cleared changed Richard's relationship with his job and public life, as he warily returned to the spotlight. Gene Vincent, Buddy Holly, and Ricky Nelson. Lovely individuals. Bad men, right? These factors produced us. Return on his terms. After his legal victory, Cliff Richard returned to public life, and fans and industry watchers saw small but substantial changes in his work and public persona. Changes that mirrored his trauma and lessons learned. According to a concert promoter who worked with Cliff after the probe, the Cliff who returned was not the same Cliff who disappeared. He chose his public interactions more carefully, protected his private, and was more choosy. This was not merely a return to business as usual. His public existence became more guarded and regulated. This change was visible in numerous ways. Richard cut his touring schedule, choosing fewer but more relevant sites than in prior decades. He tightened his media appearances and control over his presentation and discussion. A longtime associate said priorities changed drastically, was transparent and accessible about his career before the probe. After then, his health and peace of mind trumped business and public demands. He started making judgments based on what felt appropriate and safe rather than commercial or promotional. Richard was a vocal supporter of privacy rights and investigation reform. His 2018 book, The Dreamer, focused on his ordeal and its effects on justice and media duty. His private trauma became the basis for public campaigning that expanded his legacy. A media analyst who has examined celebrity privacy cases noted that Cliff's recovery was exceptional since he didn't just move on or pretend it didn't happen. It became part of his public persona, highlighting systemic issues that plagued him and many less fortunate people who don't have his means or visibility to fight back. This evolution explains Richard's less public participation since the probe. Some observers misinterpreted his decision as a career decline or semi-retirement, but it was actually a conscious decision to return to the entertainment industry on terms that protect his recovery and reflect his new priorities after a life-changing experience. A management team member said Cliff's ability to return to his prior level of involvement was never in question. He wondered if he wanted to after such a deep betrayal by trusted systems and institutions. His careful response to that issue balances reconnecting with his audience and safeguarding his hard-won rehabilitation. Innocent, but the investigation took 2 years to find no guilt. Not many people understand what it's like to have Protecting his legacy became his mission. Cliff Richard's friends noticed a new priority that had changed his business approach as he slowly returned to public life. He wanted to preserve his artistic and cultural legacy after realizing how baseless claims may overshadow 60 years of success. The incident raised Cliff's existential questions and revealed a longtime business friend. How would he be remembered if false accusations eclipsed 60 years of excellent contributions? This issue guided his career's last chapters. Several projects reflected this change. Richard grew more concerned with musical catalog archiving. Remastering historic recordings and compiling retrospective collections showed his artistic progression over 7 decades. After seeing how quickly public perception might be swayed by outside factors, these programs became more urgent. A music historian who worked on one project said he realized he wanted to be more involved in his career's legacy. Cliff had always been modest about his pop music achievements, but the probe made him see that if he didn't claim his legacy, others would. This concern extended beyond his music to his cultural and social endeavors. Richard became more involved in his longtime charities, including the Cliff Richard Tennis Foundation and Christian groups, keeping these areas of his life in balance with his entertainment career. Cliff was thinking about posterity in a new way, according to his biographer. Before the probe, he was too concentrated on his career to consider its historical background. After nearly having his life's work reduced to tabloid headlines, legacy preservation became a priority. This legacy concern explains why Richard has been choosy about new musical endeavors and public appearances after his legal vindication. He has prioritized quality above quantity, focusing on performances and air recordings that demonstrate the characteristics of his career he wants to preserve for future generations. Does every appearance, interview, and recording fit into my life's work? Explained a current project associate. This is a departure from his career's continual activity, but it shows a hard-won insight about how quickly public image can shift if you don't constantly manage your story. This evolution answers why Cliff Richard disappeared and returned slowly and strategically. His absence went beyond trauma and legal issues. It showed a significant rethinking of his relationship with fame and a desire to leave a legacy beyond his harshest public period.